In this video, I'm going to take you through our solar PV and Tesla Powerwall 2 performance and stats, as well as our electric car costs, usage for the month of June 2020. So stay tuned. Hi, John here, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, then all the details of my system that I'm going to be talking about are down below in the description. So have a gander down there if you want to know the details of our setup, our individual components and the configuration. I'm going to start with a highlight. We had our feed-in tariff payment arrive. Hurrah! So I'm going to talk you through that and how that's made up. So on June 1st, I submitted our FIT generation reading, which covered the last 3 months. And we've been credited with a princely sum of £965.83. This was the highest quarterly payment and basically only made possible for the awesome months of April and May, which were phenomenal. So this payment is calculated from the generation from our original 4 kilowatt array. We don't have a FIT payment on our new array. The payment is made up in 2 parts. So we've got the generation payment and the deemed export. The generation payment is calculated by taking the total generation figure at the end of the period away from the previously submitted one even from the previous quarter. Much like how our electricity bill is calculated, the difference between the 2 readings gives you your consumption. In this case, it's our generation. The second part of the payment is the deemed export. The term deemed export is an industry term for estimated export. 50% of what we generate is our deemed export figure. So if we generate 100 kilowatts, our deemed export would be 50 kilowatts. They assume we're going to use 50% of what we generate. So these 2 values are combined to 1 quarterly payment. And for this payment, the deemed export payment was £32.88, and the generation payment was £932.95, making the total of £965.83. Our FIT scheme dates back to September 2011 when the PV system was commissioned, and we get 55.36 pence for every kilowatt we generate. Now these payments are index linked, and they're index linked to the retail prices index. So for example, last year the generation value was 54.17 pence. This year, as I've just said, it's 55.36 pence, which is a rise of 2%. The value changes on the 1st of April each year. The deemed export has also changed. The deemed export payment was £3.82, and that was risen to £3.90, and that rose on the 1st of April of this year. So there you go, that's the jolly news. So let's get into the detail of the month of June 2020. Overall, the month was not wall-to-wall sunshine, unlike May. Many people think that June is hot and sunny. However, I have many recollections of the first couple of weeks of June is always wet and rainy. I often used to go to Le Mans in the Cobra at the beginning of June with no wet weather gear. And I always remember getting wet, soaked there and back whilst we were there. So yeah, June is typically a bit moist. So at one point during the month, I didn't think we were actually going to beat March's total, let alone come anywhere close to April or May. However, we did manage to creep past that on the 26th of June. So yeah, the month has really been a mix of cloudy skies, rain, and then the odd clear blue days where we've done really good in generation. And you'll see that when we look at the day-to-day later on. So our first chart is our monthly solar generation. In June 2020, we generated 803 kilowatt hours from our 2 systems combined. And that worked as an average daily generation over the month of 26.8 kilowatt hours. And as you can see from the chart, it's nowhere near May's total, sitting somewhere between March's and April's. Regular viewers will know that we have two systems, a 2.34 kilowatt of additional solar panels that was fitted in October 28, 2019. And before that, we had a 4 kilowatt array, which was fitted back in September 2011. So I always split those two figures out across the two systems, because I know quite a few of you like to compare the 4 kilowatt system against your 4 kilowatt system. So I've made it easier, well, for me and hopefully for you. And I've created a new chart, which has the totals for the two systems, a stacked column chart. So are you ready for the big reveal? So as you can see here, our original 4 kilowatt array produced 504 kilowatt hours over the month, and the new 2.34 array produced 299 kilowatts. The smaller array is 60% of the size of the larger one, and if you work out the percentage difference between those two figures, it's actually 59%, so fairly close in terms of its performance. Let's scroll down and look at the contribution of the Tesla Powerwall to our solar panels to our overall self-power for the house. The Tesla Powerwall is set on self-powered mode. I did swap it back to cost-saving mode for one day in the month. The forecast for Friday the 12th of June looked like a scene from Lord of the Rings, looking towards the dark, menacing skies of Sauron's castle in Mordor. So I decided to stick the Tesla on for one night. And what it meant was that the Powerwall charged overnight on the cheap rate to carry us through that Friday. And it did very well, in fact. The downside is because I'm on the original Tesla Gateway 1, there's no option to save a percentage of the battery for backup purposes. It's sort of all full or all empty. There's no reserve that can be saved for the use in the event of a power cut or power outage, or for manually triggering it when you decide to run off-grid. So, hey-ho. So for the month of June, we are looking at 91% self-powered. Looking at the split, you can see that the bulk of that was supplied by the solar panels at 57%, and 33% was provided by the Tesla Powerwall. The Powerwall contributed more this month because of the reduced amount of sunshine. If you look at May 2020, solar accounted for 69% of our total self-power. Every day was sunny from almost dawn to dusk, which meant the percentage of power provided by solar panels to power the house was much, much higher. Because June was not so sunny, it meant the Powerwall had to be used more and often picked up the delta between what the panels could provide and what the house required. The remaining 8% of our 93% self-power was pulled from the grid, and you'll see that later when we look at the day-to-day. In terms of our overall totals, we generated 803 kilowatt hours, as you know, from our solar, and the house used 841 kilowatt hours. So slightly more usage than solar power generation. Let's have a look at the year on year. I like to have a look at this chart because it tracks our solar production since day one, basically when we had the system installed. And as you can see, we track back to 2012 for the month of June. Unsurprisingly, current June, or 2020 June, towers sort of head and shoulders above the historic data. If we just look at our original 4 kilowatt configuration, that produced 504 kilowatts in June 2020. And the newer one, if you remember, was 299 kilowatts. So that puts sort of the June total into a little bit more context or perspective for you. And it means that June just gone is our fourth worst year over the 9 years for the month of June. So yeah, it wasn't a particularly brilliant June for us. Okay, let's move along and look at the Powerwall. This is the Powerwall in and out chart. It tracks what we put into the Powerwall and what we pull out of the Powerwall over the month. The Powerwall had a round trip efficiency of 90% for the month. We put 280 kilowatts in and took 250 kilowatts out. Fairly self-explanatory on that one, not much more to say. So let's skip merrily along and have a look at the day by day in a little bit more detail. And the idea of this is really just to pick up on the trends, and you can drill into the granularity of the detail if you wanted to. I don't go into a day by day detailed analysis. However, if that is of interest to you, then by all means pause the video and or download a copy of my spreadsheet, which is linked in the description below. So all of the spreadsheet basically has been used for all the underlying data which I'm using to bring up these charts for you. So yeah, have a look down there if that's of interest to you. It's sitting in my Dropbox. The key for the chart is blue represents our house usage, yellow is solar production, orange is what we sent to the grid, and red is what we pulled from the grid. A couple of highs and lows that are worth picking out. Grid usage, which is shown in red, there's a couple of days where we took benefit of our cheap off-peak rate electricity as the solar forecast looked really bad. So we used the off-peak timer to run the glass kiln and charge the Tesla, and that happened to the 7th and 8th June, so you can see the peaks there for those 2 days. On the 12th, that was the day I swapped the Powerwall to cost-saving mode. So that charged up overnight on the cheap rate as well, and it charged 100%. So 13.4 kilowatts, 13.5 kilowatts even. And on the 20th, the Kona was charged overnight on off-peak rates as well. I'll cover in more detail the Tesla and the Kona mileage, how much we put in charging, the costs, etc. later in this video. So that's the red stuff. If you look at the yellow stuff, that's the solar. You can see there are 7 days where we peaked around 40 kilowatts for the day over the course of the month. So not a brilliant month, certainly if you compare it to May. We also had 12 days where we generated between 20 kilowatts and 30 kilowatts a day. Our house and our typical usage, we need about 25 kilowatts each day to break even. So you can see there that some days we were on song and other days we were behind the curve. Let's move along and have a look at our daily average grid usage. So this chart looks as our average over the month of what the house used versus what we actually pulled from the grid. Blue is the house and red is what we pulled from the grid on the chart. So our daily average grid usage has risen from 0.7 of a kilowatt hour in May to 4.3 in June. Again, that's our daily average. And our daily average house usage was 28.6 in May, and now it's 28. So very similar to May's usage. So have a look at the next chart. So this covers what we sent to the grid, which was 113 kilowatts in June. If I was an Elvis fan at this point, I would say, way on down. So be thankful that I'm not. Basically, a lot less than half of what we sent back to the grid in May. But obviously, as a result of that, we did less solar production as well, so it sort of swings and roundabouts. If we scroll down to look at what we actually pulled from the grid over the month, which was 130 kilowatts. And as mentioned earlier, when we looked at the day by day, vast majority of that total would have been off peak at our 5 pence a kilowatt rate. So £6.50 basically for the month, 130 kilowatt hours times 5 pence equals £6.50. So for the month, that's fine. Moving on, let's have a look at the eddi. So see, how's that been performing? So the eddi heats our hot water from the excess solar. The priority order for our system is to power the house first, then fill up the Tesla Powerwall, then the eddi, and then the Zappi in that order. Once the Powerwall is 100% fully charged, then the eddi and Zappi move up the order. So it's house, eddi, then Zappi. So in June, the eddi has diverted 45 kilowatt hours of solar energy to heat our hot water. And we don't use any other heat source, purely the eddi to heat our hot water. And we've got that set to 65 degrees Celsius. For the year, the eddi has diverted 208 kilowatt hours to heat the hot water, with an accumulative total of 281 kilowatt hours. I'm actually not 100% sure that figure of 45 kilowatts is correct. The reason I say that is because I'm part of the beta testing group for the myenergi products, and it basically means I regularly update the firmware with the new release, the beta releases that they send out. And silly me, I always forget to record the stats before I do the firmware update. I have a nagging doubt in the back of my mind that some of the data may have been lost when I've done a firmware update. However, I say that when I look at April's total, it's sort of in keeping with June's total, so I may be wrong. As you'll see in a little while when we look at the Zappi, definitely I know there's sort of 20 kilowatts of drift there, which is why I feel that maybe there might be some data askew there when I've done a firmware update and it's been lost. But anyway, we'll see. In terms of what it's recorded and what that means in savings, and using our off-peak tariff of 5 pence per kilowatt, the monthly saving is £2.25, with a year-to-date saving of £10.40, again at the 5 pence per unit rate, and a cumulative saving of £14.05. And the eddi turns 1 year old on the 22nd of July this year, so we will be holding a small ceremony in the airing cupboard to celebrate. Don't think it will be a small ceremony as well, because there's not much room in the airing cupboard. Well, let's have a move along then. Let's have a look at the Zappi, which covers our Model 3 and our Kona as well. So lockdown is eased a little in June in the UK, which meant we've used the cars a little more. So let's look at the Tesla first. So the Tesla has covered 575 miles during the month of June, which is 444 more than it covered in May. It now has a total mileage of 4,248 miles. And I recorded quite a few YouTube videos on autopilot during the month of June, which is why the Tesla mileage is up quite so high. And within that, I also did 2 public charging sessions, both at superchargers, Tesla superchargers, and I generally use the Newport Pagnell services, junction 14 on the M1 southbound. It's the nearest one for me. And both of those charges were 20-minute sort of splash and dash type charges, just about enough to get me a toilet break and a cup of takeout coffee. The supercharging was free, as I've had people use my Tesla referral code when they've ordered their cars. So thank you very much to those people who have made use of that. And what that means is we both get 1,000 each free supercharging miles. So the cost to run the Tesla for the month was purely down to home charging. It cost £3.83 for the 575 miles covered. And that was putting 76 kilowatts in at 5 pence off-peak rate, which works out at £3.83. For the Kona, we used that even less. In June, we did 108 miles. It now has a total mileage of 9,849 miles. And that's actually booked in for its first annual service on the 17th of July, which actually was the earliest. the dealer had for a service while you wait appointment slot. It'll be a year old. Well, it's a year old today, actually, the 1st of July. Happy birthday, Kona! I won't sing for it. I will be doing a separate video on our 12 months ownership, you know, the highs and the lows, the good, the bad, all that kind of thing. So watch out for that, which will be coming out soon. I mentioned earlier about the monthly totals not being what I believe to be totally accurate for the eddi due to the updates to the firmware. I updated the Zappi twice over the course of the month, and I'm sure it's about 20 kilowatts light in terms of its month-end stats. So I've used the data from my spreadsheet, which I know is accurate, and included that 20 kilowatts of the Kona charge, because I don't believe that's included in the figures. So the 108 miles covered by the Kona cost us £1 to charge it for the month, basically, and that was calculated by that 20 kilowatts on the 20th of June. So 20 kilowatts times 5p is £1. So the cost to do the miles for each car over the course of the month was, for the Tesla Model 3, it was 0.007 pounds per mile over those 575 miles. For the Kona, it was 0.009 pounds per mile for the 108 miles covered in the Kona. So there you go. So let me know in the comments down below what you ended up for the month of June and what your system is and your setup, just so we can compare apples for apples. People like to see that, and a lot of people comment on how useful that data is, so please make your comments down below. Also, if you have any questions, then please drop those down in the comments below as well, and I'll do my best to pick them up and answer them. So yeah, until next time, thanks for watching, take care, and I shall see you on the next one. All right, stay safe, bye.